doctrine outlined in the National Defense Strategy. Based on the Defense Department's recent track record of successful missions, can you share some examples of military action that illustrate exactly how your leadership and vision for the Department of War is translating the peace through strength doctrine into an operational reality, and what psychological impact that may have on our near-peer adversaries such as China and Russia? And I'd like to get both yours and General Caine's perspective. If you can take 30 seconds each.
I'll keep it brief. Reestablishing deterrence was one of the core pillars of what we set out to do. After Afghanistan, after October 7th, after the war in Ukraine, after Lloyd Austin went AWOL for a week and no one seemed to care, the world took notice of that. And through the actions we've taken swiftly that I just laid out, the world has recognized that American power is back, and the willingness to utilize it shows that we can achieve peace through strength.
And General Caine, in terms of our adversaries?
Yes, sir. You know, when we look at the totality of actions that we've done over the last year, one thing leaps out at me that I think is clearly and unambiguously seen by our adversaries or those that may consider it, and that's our ability to integrate and synchronize a whole range of capabilities that we have in the joint force. Information, cyber, you know, deception, jamming, air power, sea power, land power, et cetera. And I think that ability, and I'm so proud of our joint force, those young...
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General Caine, Mr. Hegseth, and hers for being here today. I associate myself with the comments of Ranking Member Smith and Mr. Garamendi, so that I won't repeat a lot of what has been said. Mr. Hegseth, I recently realized that we have something in common. I'm also a fan of Pulp Fiction. And no, the movie is not an accurate portrayal of the Bible. You know what I'm talking about. This president and his administration have claimed to be the most transparent of all time. With that in mind, I'd love to get some straightforward answers today. Some estimates show that the Trump administration's war of choice in Iran is costing taxpayers around $1 billion every day. In addition to spending taxpayer money on a war they don't want, it is also driving up costs. The cost of gas, while the cost of living is skyrocketing under this administration's policies. To me, and I assume to the American people, it is unclear why we started this war, how it will end, and what anyone gained from it. Mr. Hegseth, about how much money has been spent on this war to date, and how much more do you anticipate spending?
Well, as our comptroller laid out, the estimate is less than $25 billion at this point as far as an expenditure. And the question I would ask this committee is, what is it worth to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, considering the radical ambitions of that regime? I mean, almost every member of this dais at some point has said, whether it was
Thank you for your answer. I'll proceed to my next question. Thank you for your answer.
President Trump is the one that's willing to make sure it doesn't happen.
Supposedly, we had taken care of the nuclear capability last time around. And now this war, we're at it again, because obviously we said we did, but we didn't.
In a way that
we know,
the United States military can do.
I want to reclaim my time. We know that the cost of oil and gas has gone up as a direct result of this war, and the American people are feeling that pain at the pump. In an attempt to alleviate the high price of gas caused directly by this president, he lifted sanctions on Russian oil. The way I see it, this is a massive gift to Putin and Russia's struggling economy. Mr. Hegseth, is there any concern that easing sanctions against Russia will allow Putin to continue funding Russia's illegal war against Ukraine?
Well, we've seen Russia's and Putin's inability to make effective battlefield gains, just like their inability to defend the Maduro regime with the billions of dollars of systems the Russians sent to Venezuela in order to defend him, which were defeated in 15 minutes. So Russia's military capabilities are no match for ours.
And you don't believe easing the sanctions is helping Russia?
Well, we have the best energy team in the planet
it's just a yes or no.
White House, so we're going to ensure that
this is not deja vu. It's a simple yes or no.
I understand the energy dominance that this administration has unleashed.
All right, well, I'll proceed to my next question. Strategy. Last week, it was announced that the Department of Defense is no longer requiring service members to get their annual flu shot. Now, this is an easy one for you. It's a softball. Don't screw it up. The rationale was to, and I quote, restore freedom to our joint force. This has been a requirement since 1950 because it is an effective at preventing the spread of flu among our troops. It's not some new woke requirement, as you like to lean on for much of your rhetoric. This decision is actively making our military less safe and less prepared. Mr. Hegseth, at this time, are there plans to remove the mandatory requirement of other vaccinations like measles, mumps, and polio?
We made very clear in our announcement that it applies to service members having a choice as it pertains to the flu vaccine.
Don't you think that's a little reckless?
No, I think allowing well-informed Americans who serve our country to make a choice is not reckless. And commanders will still have latitude, say, for a submarine or something else to make a decision for a unit about whether it could be mandatory in a particular circumstance. But overall, our troops have earned the right to be able to choose about something like that related to their health.
Mr. Hegseth, I stand by what I said last time you were here. You were incompetent then, you're incompetent now, and you're the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to incompetence. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now
Other than that, I'm doing
the gentleman
great. Thank
from
you.
Mississippi, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, don't you think it was extremely reckless to mandate COVID vaccines for the healthiest and most unlikely to get COVID and kick them out of the service if they did not comply with a, although legal, crazy order from the previous administration? Don't you think it was reckless to require that those soldiers and Marines and sailors had to take that COVID vaccine?
Congressman, thank you for the question. Not only do I think it was reckless, but we point out the nature of the emergency and lack of actual data on it. We think it may not have been legal. And as a result, we're working very hard to ensure that any service member who was pushed out is brought back in. If they were forcibly pushed out with back pay and rank and everything that comes with it, those soldiers and troops of conscience who had to make that choice, we think are the best troops in our force.
Listen, I'm grateful that we have two great National Guardsmen sitting at that table today. As a longtime serving Guardsman who just retired, I'm so proud of y'all and what you mean for our total force. It's not a National Guard, it's not a reserve, it's not an Army, it's not a Navy. It is a total force, and thank y'all for recognizing that. I just want to go back to some of the Iran stuff. I don't know, maybe they're in a different world than I'm living in, but from where I live since 1979, Iran has been at war with the United States, although we refuse to acknowledge it, whether that's Hezbollah, whether that's the Houthis, whether that is Hamas, whether that is trying to build nuclear weapons, exporting terror everywhere. I know for a fact when I was in Iraq, both tours, that EFPs made by Iranians killed our troops. I know for a fact that many of the munitions, I know for a fact many of the militias in Iran that were Shia-based were there to attack Americans at the willing knowledge of the Iranian government. Do you agree they've been at war with us and are still at war with us and the world since 1979?
Of course, for 47 years from Beirut to Baghdad, Iran has sought the most dangerous weapons in the world to try to achieve death to America. And if they were to get the most dangerous weapon in the world, a nuclear weapon, they would most certainly use it, which is why this is at the level of seriousness that President Trump was willing to address it. And that's what I think so many in this body misrepresent. North Korea is the lesson. Everybody thought North Korea shouldn't have a weapon. Under the Clinton administration, they gathered so many ballistic missiles that their ballistic missile shield allowed them to blackmail the region and the world to say, we're going to get a nuke and you can't do anything about it. Under this administration, them weakened by the 12-day war and what happened with Midnight Hammer, the President made a bold choice on behalf of the American people to say never will Iran, with their view of death to America and death to Israel, have a nuclear weapon, because if they have it, they'll use it. And he's taken that bold action in a way I think the American people, when they understand the nature of that threat, and they do, they support it.
Chairman Caine, wow, I've been around a long time. Can any other military in the history of the world pull off Venezuela, Midnight Hammer, and Epic Fury the way that our great warriors that defend and project power for our nation. Are you aware of any other nation in the history of the world that could have done that?
I'm not sure, and I remain very proud of the Joint Force. I'll also say that we're a learning organization, and we're going to continue to look at the things that go right in any operations that we're tasked to do, and we're going to get better every day. So we do not want to sit on the successes and assume future successes. We owe it to the nation and to the citizens to constantly improve no matter how well something goes. So I'm incredibly proud of the Joint Force. That said, I'm even more proud when they come back after that. They go into a team room and they start debriefing to make sure that we do it better next time, whatever it may be.
And my final point, I just want to talk about what a stroke of genius it was, greater than I would have thought, to blockade the ports of Iran. And that blow economically to their entire economy and to their leadership and everything else, it's going to take a little bit of time to play out. But that was so smart because it is more effective than any bombs, and those bombs were effective in Midnight Hammer. They continue to be. But until we kill their will to create a nuclear weapon, they will always be a nuclear threat because they've advanced far enough along. But that blockade was so important. And it amazes me now we're crying about high gas prices when they were $2 a gallon more just 4 years ago or 5 years ago under the previous administration. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Caine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, tomorrow is 2 months since the war has begun. You've testified that it was $25 billion in cost in terms of the munitions we used and what we paid for it. But when you add to that the damage that was done to our bases and today's dollars for buying replacement munitions and replacement aircrafts, what has the total cost been over the last 60 days?
That number right now reflects the total cost that we're seeing.
Including buying in today's dollars the new weapons and replacements and including the damage there? That's your testimony?
If there's
under oath?
adjustments to that, I would defer to the comptroller on that.
And how much are you seeing in terms of, are you asking in terms of supplemental funding just for the Iran mission from this committee?
If and when a supplemental is submitted,
Yeah, how much?
the majority of it would not just be for, would not be
But
for
what
Epic
would be
Fury,
the
it would be
ballpark for Iran?
munitions related to the entirety
Just
of
a
what
number,
we want to
sir.
get done.
A number. What would you submit? What are
It
you
would be
requesting?
within the, on Iran, it would be less than $25 billion, but there's a lot more we would ask for beyond
So
just Iran.
you're saying it's
considering-
$25 billion. Okay, I would just, if you
Okay.
come back, you want to revise those numbers because all the experts are disagreeing with you when it comes to today's dollars and damage, but you can revise it. How much did it cost American taxpayers in terms of the strike to the Iranian school where kids were killed? Do you have that number in terms of the missiles we used?
As I've said, that unfortunate situation remains under investigation.
You don't know how much it
15-6
costs the
investigation, but I
taxpayer?
wouldn't tie a cost to that, to anything.
It's a reasonable question, no, sir? I mean, our taxpayer money was going there. Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear bomb.
I'm going to give you that
I
opportunity.
would simply ask you what the.
Yeah,
you're
but,
playing gotcha
sir,
questions
sir,
about
no, it's
domestic
not.
things. I'm not.
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased
Why
cost
won't
of
you
gas
answer what
and
it
food?
costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
I give you that, sir. But let me.
What
if you
would
could
it
just
cost?
ask my-
What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't
but
get a nuclear
can you-
bomb?
Do you,
what would
sir,
you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost
Let
of
me-
Iran
let me give
holding
you the
that
number.
straight at
Let me
issue
give
with
you the
nuclear
number.
weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. Now, let me give you this point. You're saying that your operation is preventing a nuclear Iran. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than
Yeah, but
what the previous
but
administration did to
acknowledge
our
that-
economy,
to acknowledge
what the
there's a
previous
cost.
administration
You-
did
you
with
don't even
inflation,
know what the- you know
what
what's
the previous
upsetting? I reclaim
administration
my
did with
time. You know,
COVID,
Secretary-
and you're going to
Secretary,
lecture this
I reclaim
administration
my
about
time,
the
sir.
economy?
You know what is upsetting? to me?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There was still 440 pounds of low-enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to a nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs, you don't know what food costs, you don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA? Trump did.
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that that type of stuff worked, and then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all three of you for being here today. It's a real privilege to be a part of this committee. We are the most bipartisan committee out of 20 in Congress. We have a tradition of voting on NDAAs with large majorities year after year. And it's important not to be a Republican first in here or a Democrat first. We're Americans trying to ensure that our country is well defended. And in that spirit, I compliment the operations in Iran. I served 30 years in the Air Force. We were attacked repeatedly by proxy groups from Iran on every deployment I was on. They were the #1 threat where I was located. I've lost friends, like at Khobar Towers. Iran with a nuclear weapon would have been an existential threat to our country. And if they had a missile that could hit New York, they would have done it. They would have done it 2 months ago. So I support our operations there. I think it was good that we got Maduro out. You know, I would say it would be important to get the representative government that duly won their election there, and not good to replace one dictator with another dictator, but Maduro was bad for their country. And I support our 5% GDP spending. There's no way to modernize our nuclear force, 6th-generation fighters, take care of our men and women in uniform without being at 5% GDP. But also in the spirit, I share a bipartisan concern of the firings that we've seen at the Pentagon. 4 of the 6 service chiefs, for example, the Coast Guard. We had a huge bipartisan majority here that had confidence in the Army Chief of Staff and the Secretary of Navy. And I would just point out, it may be constitutionally right. You have the constitutional right to do these things, but it doesn't make it right or wise. Now, my first question is dealing with the housing allowance, something I've been working for the last 2 or 3 years. Our housing allowance is underpaying people in certain areas. And the department, and that hasn't started under this administration, it's been going on for a while, they take out 5% of the housing allowance. They send it to other needs. But that means we're underpaying our servicemen and women living off base by 5%. So we tried to fix it with a $2.9 billion line item to fix housing allowance. But that money was moved. So Mr. Secretary, could you tell us how we're going to fix this? Because we have a shortfall in housing allowance, and we tried to fix it out of here, and I'd like to get it fixed.
Congressman, I agree with you. I think that is precisely the kind of quality of life issue that's been ignored time and time again. Oftentimes with good intentions of trying to do some trade-off with something else. But I mentioned the 7% pay increase. That's just for junior enlisted. It's 6% from E6 to 03, and it's 5% from 04 all the way up. But closing that gap, TRICARE reimbursement's a big one we're going to look at as well. If we reimburse TRICARE lower than Medicare, then no one wants to take TRICARE, and now you don't have a real network for service members. So those places where we pinched pennies to try to eke out additional budget space have really hurt service members. So I'm committed to working with you on that to close that gap and ensure that folks can live where they are asked to serve
Thank you.
Because they can afford housing.
Okay, I think this has already been addressed to a degree, but I just want to emphasize we did put $400 million in for Ukraine. I asked you to execute it. It's important for most of us in here. It has overwhelming support. Also, I'm the chair of the Baltic Security Caucus, and we've put money in for the Baltic Security Initiative. These people love America. They love freedom more than anywhere I've ever been, and they need us. They're on the front lines with Russia. I have a question for the chairman. So we did 29 years of the nuclear alert, airborne alert, the Looking Glass mission. In 1991, we turned that off because the Cold War turned to our favor. But I think we're back to where we were at. Russia's a threat. China's building a nuclear force to match ours. I think we need a Looking Glass 2 and restore that nuclear command and control survivability that gives us deterrence. Russia, China needs to know no matter what they do, we can launch those 400 ICBMs. What's your vision for the Looking Glass 2 or the follow-on?
Well, sir, as you know, right now we're looking at all three legs of the nuclear triad to make sure that that most critical backstop on our nation's most important day is reliable, redundant, and workable. And so we'll take a look at that. I know the team already deep in analysis on all the from NC3 to the end state. But what I want you to know is the most important thing is the ability to execute if we had to, and we can.
You know, for 29 years we had a plane airborne with the general on board, and it gave the Pentagon, the White House, STRATCOM the assurance that we had a backup. I think we're back to the future.
Yes,
and
sir,
I appreciate your look at it.
I just flew with them, and they were doing great work.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk briefly about the current U.S. doctrine and conduct of the administration in a particular event and a series of events, actually. As everybody in the dais and the witness table is aware, the Department of Defense Law of War Manual specifies that any order to kill shipwrecked persons in an illegal order would constitute a war crime. It isn't suggested there's a specific example to show a clear-cut example of what this entails in our own manual. With that in mind, let's look back a few weeks ago when a fishing crew ended a long day of hard fishing, scoring a full stock of albacore and swordfish on board. Without any warning or expectation, this small Ecuadorian fishing vessel, operating about 200 nautical miles off the Galapagos Islands, was militarily engaged by U.S. forces. It was hit once, then it was hit again. Not a warning shot, not an interdiction, 2 drone strikes. Survivors described chaos and severe injuries. Our U.S. forces then handcuffed the crew at gunpoint, placed black hoods over their heads, seized and scrubbed their devices, and then held them for days. Ultimately, the crew was released, given there was no evidence to support any narco activity or any charges that may be against them. So to recap, we struck a vessel, we struck it again, set fire to it as it was sinking, and as public reports say, even drank their beer. We detained the survivors, and then we let them go. This should be eye-opening. Now let's go to another example, the double tap or 2-strike attack that took place on September 2nd in the Caribbean. A vessel was struck, disabled, and then struck again, killing all but 2 survivors that were left clinging to the wreckage. And this is the thing. We know this happened. We know how it happened, and the Defense Department still refuses to release the follow-up video of the killing of the shipwrecked survivors, even though they released the initial one to the public in major news networks worldwide. No difference in sources and methods in the 2 videos, but still not released to the public. Of course, the backlash was severe at the time and perhaps is being forgotten. An unpredictable but ignoble display of character from this administration, fingers were pointed at one another as everyone scurried to cover, in a tacit acknowledgement that this was an issue potentially violating international law. Now, I've reviewed what's been available, the phony rationale that these attacks are about fentanyl trafficking, when we know fentanyl comes from China, India, through Mexico. Then the baseless argument that this was about narco-terrorism. You know, I don't believe a word of it. This was to create leverage for regime change in Venezuela. And now the president acknowledged that was about oil. Beyond the simple need for justice and exercising American values, it's important for us to discuss what the U.S. belligerence in the world stage means to our security, our ability to marshal cooperation with our allies, and most importantly, not to normalize these actions that could endanger the lives of our own service members put in similar peril. Let me be clear about one thing. Whether it's these particular strikes discussed here, the one that killed 11 others off the coast of Venezuela, whether it's the 178 other killings, with each of these extrajudicial killings, the administration is pirating American values. We'll continue to investigate this. We will. It'll come forward in the future. Some days that second video will be released. But we've got to stop also using our precious resources that are being taxed so heavily all over the world on actions that hurt our military. They hurt our military and they hurt our standing internationally, and they're hurting our standard here at home. I hope that we can move forward. I hope we can review whether these are justified, because I found no justification. We were given classified information on the second strike. I can't discuss it, but I must tell you, it's the most convoluted bullshit I ever heard in my life. This should be public. This is our honor. This is what it makes American a difference maker. This is what we're proud of.
It's an incredible array of false accusations.
And I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Hegseth and General Caine and Mr. Hurst, for your bold leadership and for your time today. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you how awesome this hearing is today. It's fantastic. From someone who sat up here for 4 years during the last administration, this is a great day. Despite some of the crazy and disrespectful comments from some in this room, the Department of War is back. Today is a win because we are discussing American power and dominance, national security, and making America great again. There may be differences in how we go about that, but at least we are not wasting all of our time talking about how to restructure the Department of War into a social experiment that appeases the far-left woke agenda that existed for the last 4 years. Thank God those 4 years of the disastrous Biden administration are done. On behalf of someone who served 25 years on active duty and almost everyone I know currently serving in uniform, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for saving the department. Okay, my question. The U.S. Special Operations Command budget has been relatively flat over the past decade, failing to keep pace with inflation and reducing the command's purchasing power by 14%. I was disappointed to see that SOCOM's FY27 budget request was only $223 million higher than last year's enacted level, dropping even further from an already less than 2% to now just above 1% of the department's overall budget. All of this comes despite being increasingly asked to do more. From 2023 to 2025, there was a 35% increase in combatant command demand for soft capabilities. And last year alone, SOCOM was unable to satisfy roughly 70 mission-specific requests due to resource and capacity restraints. Secretary Hegseth, I have appreciated the opportunity to meet with members of your team and leaders like ASW Solik Anderson and SOCOM Commander Admiral Bradley as we work to grow the SOCOM top line for future fiscal years. Can you discuss the critical role soft plays in underpinning deterrence, and do you agree with the urgent need to grow the SOCOM budget accordingly?
Well, Congressman, thank you for your words, and I wholeheartedly agree. When you look at the burden that SOCOM shoulders on behalf of the Joint Force, it's incredible and it's significant. And so many of the things we have accomplished would not have been possible without the incredible leadership of Admiral Bradley, General Braga, and others inside that community and what they do. I recognize your desire for increased funding beyond what is in FY27. We have and will continue to look at that. That needs to happen. I think some of the other things inside the budget, drones, quality of life, there will be things that are applied to that community even more so, we believe, to ensure that they're taken care of properly. And then there's facility questions that are outstanding also, which we're examining. So we're committed, and we want to work with you. Where we've missed something, we need to get it right because they are at the front lines.
Thank you. And that leads into my next question. I just want to ask this real quickly. This year's budget request of $54.6 billion for the DOG, for the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group, is a vital step to unleash American drone dominance and rapidly integrate autonomous and unmanned systems across the joint force. And we've talked about that a little bit here. However, my concern is only $1 billion of this proposed funding is included in the base request, with the remaining $53.6 billion dependent on future reconciliation package. While I understand the flexibility this approach provides, I remain concerned about the potential gaps created if such a package fails to occur, or if funding for the DOG is not included in future budget requests. And like you said, I'm hoping that SOCOM is a big part of this. But to avoid critical capability gaps, how is the department planning to fully fund DOG at the $54.6 billion if reconciliation stalls, or if the department, or does the department intend to transition funds for autonomous requirements into the base budget for future years? And additionally, as you mentioned, how will the department ensure SOCOM receives and executes portions of this funding to meet future mission requirements?
It's the right question, and we plan to work hand in glove with this committee, with OMB, with the White House, to ensure that that reconciliation package is properly tailored and timed so that it is passed, so that critical money gets there. So we're not looking to FY28 or FY29, because we need those capabilities right now, which is why I appreciate the chairman's opening question about reconciliation. It is a critical vehicle in this calendar year to ensure this department is fully funded to meet the threats of the future.
Well, thank you. Once again, I think you guys are doing an incredible job. I appreciate your leadership, and thank you for your time today. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, I recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you gentlemen for being here today and for the opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation with each of you. I have many questions, and unfortunately need to start with some that disturb me, Mr. Secretary, from your opening remarks. In your opening remarks, Mr. Secretary, you reserved more words and more time and more vitriol to condemn Democrats than you did for Xi and for Putin combined. It's pretty telling to me that you decided to use your words and your time for that. It turns out that Democrats, even Democrats in Congress, are patriots as well. We serve in our uniformed services, we admire and love our uniformed services, and we love our country just as much as Republicans do. In fact, in this body, I and Representative Bacon, who you just spoke to, led the junior enlisted pay raises that you now sit there and laud as and take credit for. We led the closing of the BAH, which then you ended up poaching and using for other things. This body led and authorized Ukrainian funding that is now being withheld. You also, in your opening remarks, strangely admonished us here for not being patient with the results of your 2-month war, a war of your suggestion to this president, a war of your choice, a war you executed without congressional consultation. And so it shouldn't be shocking, sir, Mr. Secretary, that we have questions. Indeed, it's constitutionally our right to do so. So to be clear, despite a brilliant performance by our men and women in uniform, despite thousands of tactical successes, Iran still has nuclear material, still has air defenses, still has small boats, and still has the Strait. So despite the fact that your recent comments indicate that operations appear to be finished, there clearly is more work that needs to be done. As mentioned, today is indeed 60 days. So, Mr. Secretary, how many more months, just order of magnitude, do you think that you're going to need to be able to conclude operations successfully? And how many more billions of dollars do you think you're going to ask this body for?
Well, as you know, and as the President has stated, you would never tell your adversary,
Sir, I recognize that is the line that you always
especially once you've
give me an order of
decimated their
magnitude.
military and you control their
3X,
strait,
4X.
how long you would be committed to the mission.
And the next thing that you mentioned in your opening
You know
remarks,
that.
Mr.
You would never do that.
Secretary, is that you called on, which astounded me, examples of the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, and the Vietnam war. Those are stunning examples to me of something that didn't go our way. We had the opportunity to execute on those wars quite well, but we didn't accomplish any mission, in my opinion, and I think you would agree on that as well.
My point is this effort is not those efforts.
That's exactly it. Is this war shaping up to be that war? Because it has every
We're shaping up to get the
indication
same kind of
and earmark for
Democrats we
that.
got in those wars who were
And once
naysayers
again, you
from
go
the
back to
beginning,
parties.
undermining the
Can we
progress of
just have a
troops.
conversation
We're 2
about the country
months
and the nation
in.
and not about parties?
The Democrat Party wanted to socially engineer the
having
Department of War.
conversations about
We've had to undo that and get it to a point where it's capable of projecting power, and that's
Clearly,
exactly
you're not
what
able to
we've
have
done.
that conversation.
And
So I will
President Trump
move
has
on, sir,
rebuilt
and
it.
I'm going to reclaim my time. General George, let's talk about a guy who's a patriot, somebody who every single person here in this dais and down there in that audience and out there in this world has huge admiration for. Why did he get fired?
Well, as with any moves we make with general officers, first of all, I thank them for their service, and ultimately...
My impression is you thanked him by a text or a phone call. You didn't even do it to his face.
Out of respect for these officers, we never talk about the nature of their removal, but every one of them, including myself, knows that they serve at the pleasure of the President.
Why did you fire him?
Ultimately, out of respect to these officers, we don't reveal it. However, I will note, it's very difficult to change the culture of a department that was been destroyed by the wrong perspectives.
So you think General George destroyed a culture?
There are many, we've gotten rid of many general officers in this administration because we need new leadership.
You have no way of explaining why you fired one of the most decorated and remarkable men who's
we
ever
needed
served
new
this
leadership.
nation.
That's
And
my
so
answer.
your answer is a very immature way of responding to my request. My next question has to do with my remaining time about the fact that there apparently are orders that you've recently given to the Navy to detail officers to command billets in special operations where they, the people who you're detailing, have already received bad performance reviews. They've received negative fitness reports. Is there a truth to that statement, sir?
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
Have you ever ordered the Navy to add officers who never screened for Special Operations Major Command to the promotion list for flag officer?
I'm not aware of what you're referring to.
All right, I'll take that for no. Thank you, I yield.
Generally yields back. For everybody's situational awareness, it's my plan at 1 o'clock or approximately 1 o'clock to recess for about 10 minutes to give the witnesses a chance to stretch their legs and visit the restroom if necessary. But with that, we will now go to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Secretary, are you aware that Iran, either through our intelligence or they themselves, said they had about 500 kilograms of enriched uranium, up to about 60%?
We're aware of what they have or what they believe they have and what we know they have, but all of that is classified.
Fair enough. And if indeed they had 500 kilograms of your enriched uranium, how long would it take it to weapons grade?
Quickly enough that it's a serious national security problem for the United States of America.
If I said days or a few weeks, would that be inaccurate?
You might be somewhere in the ballpark.
Okay, thank you. Actually, you can just get that from ChatGPT. It'll give it to you. Okay. So it's not that classified. All right. Would you say that our primary mission in this war is to deny Iran the capability to develop a nuclear weapon?
Yes.
And would you say that a regime that's capable of killing 35,000 of its own people within a 2-day period, are they capable, if they had the delivery systems, to carry out their threat to destroy Israel and also to harm the United States of America?
Any regime willing to kill 35,000, and we think it might be more, 45,000 of their own citizens in cold blood, would most certainly be willing to use the most dangerous weapon in the world, especially as history teaches us, when a nation says they will do something, you ought listen. And when they chant death to America or death to Israel, if they got that nuclear weapon, history tells us they might use it.
Well, Hitler said he was going to kill the Jewish, and he was going to try to eliminate the Jewish population and Jews from the face of the world. Nobody really believed him, but he really tried to do that. So when somebody tells me for 47 years that they want to kill us, I think I'm going to take them at their word. And so would you also agree that now another goal of ours is to make sure that Iran never blockades the Strait of Hormuz, never has control of the Strait of Hormuz? Would that be an objective of ours?
What they're doing right now is effectively piracy. It's terrorism. It's threatening international shipping. And our blockade is signaling to the world that we actually control that strait. And I would ask this committee, what would this effort look like if Iran had nuclear weapons? Imagine if not Iran had nuclear capabilities, what they would do to wield over any advantage they have, from proxies to funding international terrorism.
Mr. Secretary, also, not only would they do that, but imagine if we had not become energy independent. Under the previous administration, they were hampering our ability to be energy independent under the guise of the Green New Deal, which is insanity, by the way. I'm going to go back a little bit in history. We were bombed, Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7th, 1941. Do you know how long it took for the United States to have its first major victory in World War II? In the Pacific Theater?
Number of years.
No, it was actually 6 months. It was the Battle of Midway, all right? It was a turning point of World War II. Could you imagine if we had had the same Democrats asking then Secretary of War, all right, gee, it's been 2 months, okay, and we haven't won this war yet back then. We didn't win a major battle for 6 months. Your job, the job of the military, what you've done in the first 2 months is extraordinary. And so, again, for a couple of final questions. Do you know how much money we spent on Ukraine? Helping Ukraine?
Under the previous administration?
No, right now, up to now.
Upwards of $300 billion, $350 billion?
You're probably right, about $300 billion. And yet I don't hear anything about, gee, how much money have we spent on Ukraine from the other side? The difference between them and me is this. I support the United States and their efforts to help Ukraine against a dictatorial, aggressive power like Russia, which is our second greatest adversary. But I also support our efforts to make sure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. And so you'll always have my support, and I'm pretty consistent in that. I also support our efforts in what we did in Venezuela. We still have to go a little bit further because that remnants of that regime are still there. And we need to provide freedom for the people of Venezuela. And also, one thing, for me, I guess what I'm looking for in this war with Iran is to make sure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, that we have established an inspection protocol to make sure they never get a nuclear weapon, and that we control the strait, and they never can control the strait.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, now
Thank you.
recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to go in a little bit different direction. Timothy Parlatore served as your private attorney, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Parlatore also served as private attorney for President Trump's campaign, correct?
I'm not privy to every professional position that he's held.
Well, I'll help you out. He did. And you appointed Mr. Parlatore as your senior advisor, correct?
He does reserve duty on behalf of the Navy.
His title is senior advisor. You gave him that title, correct?
And I would count him as very much an advisor of mine.
Yep. He travels with you, correct?
Tim Parlatore has been a long-term friend. He's a great patriot.
He travels with you. That's not what I asked. I reclaim my time. He travels with you, doesn't he? He travels with you, doesn't he? Correct? There's public Instagram that shows this. Just say yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay. He sits in meetings with you and advises you, doesn't he?
He sits in some meetings on occasion.
Well, he maintains a desk in an office in the Pentagon, does he not?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
It's a big Pentagon.
You directly commissioned Mr. Parlatore in the Naval Reserve as a Navy commander in March 2025, did you not?
I was very proud to do so.
And when you did, because he's a Navy Reserve officer, he didn't have to go through the PPO process, the White House Presidential Personnel Office, right? He wasn't vetted by a White House PPO.
Uniformed service members don't get vetted by
The answer is yes. He didn't have to be vetted by a White House PPO. He didn't go through the Senate confirmation process either, did he? The answer is no.
I don't know what you're getting to, but Tim is a fantastic
I'll tell you what I'm getting to. The answer is no, right?
He does great work.
Okay. He didn't maintain a security clearance when you appointed him as special advisor. Is that right?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
I mean, anybody that has access to sensitive material is going to have the appropriate clearance.
Okay, so when you appointed him as special advisor, he had a security clearance?
You're trying to piece together a timeline.
No, I'm asking a simple question. One of your special, most sensitive advisors, did he have a security clearance?
No, you're playing a gotcha game like you do on TV and everywhere else. You're trying to thread together details that are connected about something else.
Clearly you're concerned about my line of questioning, aren't you, Mr. Secretary? Because you know where it's going, don't you? I think you do. So does Mr. Parlatore represent foreign governments? He has a private law practice, does he not?
From what I understand of his law practice, he does a lot of great work for service members in the military and other.
He maintains a private law practice. Does he represent foreign governments or foreign persons in that private law practice?
I don't know.
You don't know. Somebody who's sitting in your meetings, a special advisor, you don't know. Does he represent any senior officers who are currently under consideration for promotion by you or your office?
The only person that makes determinations about senior officers is me.
Answer the question. Does he represent senior officers who are under consideration for promotion by you?
No, I'm the one that makes decisions about choosing.
Does he represent them, Mr. Secretary? Does he represent them?
He doesn't represent anyone. He's a legal advisor and always has been.
But he has clients, does he not?
He's a legal advisor to me on reserve duty, and he always has been, and he does a fantastic job.
Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed? I reclaim my time. Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed from an investigation by the White House last year?
I don't know what you're referring to, but not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it? Was it true that you were also removed from that same investigation? The answer is yes.
No, not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it. That's interesting. Well, is it true that Mr. Parlatore disparaged President Trump?
I don't know what you're referring to, but no.
Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was accused by President Trump and his lawyers of lying?
What you're accused of is a cute line of questioning that's going nowhere.
Well, it's going somewhere, which is why you're not answering the question. Was it true that he was accused of lying by the president's legal team?
I'm not familiar to. You'd have to give me the context.
Well, it's right here. You want to look at the statement from President Trump's legal team?
Anybody could blow up a quote and claim it says something, and that's what you're doing in a little stunt.
Secretary Hegseth, what I'm really concerned about is you purport to have unfaltering loyalty to President Trump, and yet you are continuously going.
Oh, you care a lot about President Trump, don't you?
You are going
behind his back. This is a cute waste of your 5 minutes.
Appointing
a
people.
Huge, cute waste of your 5 minutes that led nowhere.
I reclaim my time. You are repeatedly going behind the president's back.
Gentleman from Colorado's time. Go ahead, Mr. Carl.
You are repeatedly going behind President Trump's back, appointing people who he is accused of lying, who the White House is accused of lying.
Gentleman's time's expired.
And you are not being honest with
President Gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request unanimous consent to enter a number of documents into the record. The first of which is a statement from Corey Mills, First Sergeant, stating his forms and accounts of his military service are falsified. The second document is a picture of Corey Mills wearing a Bronze Star from 2019 before he ever got a Bronze Star. The third document is a document that conveys a Bronze Star medal and his life-saving care to the wounded, and according to the soldiers who were there, they said it never happened, according to the men who were there. The next document is a transcript of a conversation I had with Brigadier General Arnold Gordon Bray, who confirmed that he did not review, did not read, did not physically sign the form, DD, I guess 638, form 638, that Mills submitted for a Bronze Star. And to be candid, he said, quote, I didn't look at it. I asked to review the email that he sent to Mills' staff about authorizing his signature for a form he did not review, and he said that he would not share it with me. That's a future subpoena. I would like to enter to record a picture of Corey Mills, who says this is the second time he got blown up, but what he wouldn't tell people that the blood on the pant leg in this photo is the blood of Sergeant Ray. It is not Corey Mills' blood. In the same series of photos he shares when he said he was, quote, blown up, are images of a Humvee that exploded with severe damage. That is not his Humvee. His Humvee purportedly was 50 yards away and suffered no damage and was not blown up. This is a copy of Corey Mills' marriage certificate with a 9/11 imam at a 9/11 mosque, entered for the record and redacted, with family members' names redacted and protected. This is a picture of Corey Mills with a purported Russian hooker in Afghanistan, which he, of course, denies. And then last but not least, I would like to request unanimous consent to enter into the record a restraining order against Corey Mills for dating violence. Thank you. I just buried my father on Thursday, Mr. Chairman. My father died with shrapnel in his body. He had 3 tours of combat, 2 in Vietnam, 1 in 1965 during the coup d'etat of the Dominican Republic. And I take stolen valor seriously because we have men and women in uniform that have given their lives. And an individual that steals the stories of dead soldiers or injured soldiers have no right to serve in this body, let alone on this committee. And so I take it very seriously. I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary, and the folks that serve under you in the Department of War. As my father lay dying on April 14th, there was only one thing that calmed him down, that gave him the courage to pass on to the next life. And that was for me to read stories and testimony from 3 different soldiers that we didn't have, our family previously didn't have. We've been doing a lot of research on my father's service when he received the Distinguished Service Cross with V device in 1968 in Dong Zai. He rescued every man in that battle, in that firefight over a 2-day period. He rescued them dead or alive on his own. He stood up to take fire over and over and over again. He called on artillery, heavy artillery, onto his position. Within 100 meters of his position, the man should have never made it out of Vietnam alive. And in fact, his commanding officers kept him back in many cases because they thought he was on a suicide mission because he was just so dangerous out there. But he saved the lives of so many soldiers. And so as he was taking his final breaths, I was provided by the Department of the Army some testimony of soldiers we didn't have, and diagrams and information. It was the one thing that calmed him down so that he could pass away knowing that he was a war hero and knowing that Jesus loved him. And it changed our family's life, and it changed his life in his last moments, his last breaths, his last hours. And for that, I am so grateful for the ship that you're running at the Pentagon and the Department of War. I have heard from people in the way that you're trying to innovate and trying to change the way we do business there. And I'm glad that you're firing people. There are people there that are getting in your way. They need to go. And the efficiencies that you want to bring, whether it's shipbuilding, whether it's cyber, whether it's AI, whether it's public-private partnerships, we have never seen a secretary at the Department of War who has been as innovative as you have. So I can't say enough good things about you right now. I was impressed. I was concerned about troops on the ground in Iran early on, and I was impressed with where we are today, how those soldiers were evacuated that got in that flight that crashed. But everything I have seen, you have surpassed all of my expectations, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and God bless you.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Secretary and General Caine. I'd like to use my time to drill down on an important decision concerning America's surface fleet. That is the future of the DDG-51 Flight 3 destroyer. Everyone on this committee knows about the Navy's struggles to successfully design, manage, and field new classes of ships. To name a few examples, I'll highlight the Littoral Combat Ship, the Zumwalt-class destroyer, and the recently canceled Constellation-class frigate. By any measure, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer has been a highly successful program that continues to deliver the Navy a large surface combatant it can depend on. So the Zumwalt-class destroyers were going to replace the Arleigh Burke. It's a ship with some interesting capabilities, but the Navy rushed to construction before the design was complete, and it lacked a workable weapon system that the Navy wanted to outfit it with. So the Navy scrapped the program at 3 ships and went back to the DDG. I'm in my 8th year on this committee, and the entire time I've been in conversation with the Navy publicly and privately about the latest Flight 3 destroyer and how critical a role it would play, and now is playing for the surface fleet. And yet, even before we delivered one to the fleet, the Navy was already planning the DDG-X. I'm skeptical about the transition to yet another new class of surface ship, given the troubles I've laid out already. From my perspective, we have a proven hull for an Arleigh Burke destroyer that is described by CNO after CNO again and again and again as the backbone of the Navy's surface fleet. But now I'm even more skeptical. The proposal cuts production of the destroyer down to just 1 ship, scraps the future destroyer, and proposes $17 billion to build just a single new battleship, a class of ship the Navy decommissioned in 1992. Mr. Secretary, when you visited Bath Iron Works, you discussed this budget proposal with shipbuilders. You said, quote, "We're maxing out on DDGs. It's a workhorse, and it's a damn good workhorse." You were right about the DDGs. They are a workhorse. They're cost-efficient, deadly effective, and feared by our enemies. And I'm wondering why would we move on so quickly from a relatively new Flight 3 destroyer that's the gold standard for ballistic missile and drone defense capabilities. It's a ship that's proven itself time and again, recently in the Mediterranean, Persian Gulf, and the Taiwan Strait. I understand the Navy wants to field hypersonic missiles, but look no further than the 3 Zumwalt ships that the Navy has in the fleet that have been refitted with vertical launch tubes capable of delivering hypersonic missiles at a great payload at over 17,000 miles this year. Perhaps what's most troubling to me is that the battleship plan proposes moving at a pace that is, I think, extremely dangerous, or just high risk, low reward. To begin construction so quickly, breezing right through design. It's well documented that expediting design and preemptively moving to construction is the greatest recipe for failure. This represents an unacceptable cost to taxpayers if it fails, and leaves America less secure and our Navy less prepared. I understand the proposed battleship was a bit of a dream child of the recently departed Secretary of the Navy. I want to remind everyone here that recent history is littered with failed efforts to replace existing successful programs that remain the best in class worldwide. This isn't the failure of shipbuilders or sailors. It's a failure by leaders to learn a simple lesson. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. My sincere hope is that you, the Navy, and the Congress will pump the brakes on this battleship. Take the time to get it right, whatever it is. And for now, focus on the workhorse you can depend on. America cannot afford a surface fleet without a backbone.
Well, I very much appreciate that perspective. And the idea of divesting of an asset that's indispensable right now is not just a Navy problem. I mean, we've seen the same on MQ-9s and Apaches and A-10s and systems that our warfighters continue to rely on, which is why divesting to invest, which was sold under the previous administration because of continuing resolutions and insufficient budgets, created a gap where now you're getting rid of the very things that you need right now, and you don't have available things of the future that you said you would have because of the way this department did business. Always over cost, always delayed. So there's one destroyer, one Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in this budget because, and I hate to even say it, I'm not going to say it in open hearing, how many years behind we are in the backlog of building the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. So the bulk of the money goes into shipbuilding to fix that, ensure we can get new places to build more faster. Then you can fund additional, either whether it's this class or the next class. But the Arleigh
We're almost over time. I'm going to reclaim and just say in my last seconds here, careful with the pace moving through design to construction so quickly as proposed by this budget. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. As announced earlier, we're going to now recess until 10 minutes past the hour of 1.